FEMA Director Griswold. So both of them are on the ground leading the fight against this god-awful wildfires in worst in California history. And there's been some progress in the last 24 hours. So I want to give an update of where we think things are at the moment. First, overnight, local, state, and federal firefighters were able to partially prevent some of the largest fires from spreading into new areas. 3% in Pasadena has been kept from spreading, 8% in Pacific Palisades, 35% in Ventura, and 37% in Sylmar. But this time yesterday, these fires are mostly spreading out of control. We've still got a long way to go, as we're out to hear from the governor and others. And while the winds have died down for the time, we expect they'll remain a threat until early next week. So we're going to keep working 24/7 to support state and local officials to fully stop these fires as soon as possible. Next, we're going to make sure California has every possible resource to fight these fires and help survivors. As soon as the fire started, I approved the Fire Management Assistance Grants, which is a fancy phrase for saying the grants to cover the cost of firefighting federally, and the gear, equipment, capabilities like search and rescue. Then I immediately approved at the governor's request a major disaster declaration, which will pay for things like debris removal, temporary lodging, and first responder overtime pay. Both of these, the grants and the declaration, usually cover 75% of the state's cost. But yesterday I directed the federal government will cover 100% of the state cost for 180 days. I also announced FEMA has turned on its Critical Needs Assistance Program. This program gives one-time payment of $750 to survivors so they can quickly purchase critical items like water, formula, gasoline, and prescription drugs. Survivors should go to disasterassistance.gov or call 1-800-621-3362. We can't help you if we don't know you need the help. So call disasterassistance.gov, contact or call 1-800-621-3362. And I want to be clear, this is not the only aid the survivors can request from FEMA. More programs are going to be available through the disaster declaration, but this assistance that survivors can get now and get it fast. We're also helping the state and local law enforcement personnel keep people safe. I've offered Governor Newsom additional support on that front too. For example, the Defense Department, military personnel can help direct traffic, evacuate people where traffic lights have been destroyed. Finally, I want to thank all the first responders. And I often say, God made man, then he made a few firefighters. And these are men and women. The firefighters in Los Angeles are proof of that. The scope, the scale, and the erratic movements of these fires is truly unprecedented. I mean, it's truly unprecedented. And but day after day, these firefighters have been pulling 24-hour shifts, rushing the flames with hurricane-force winds as well, to rescue people, to evacuate neighborhoods, and put these fires out. Now I speak for the American people when I say, we owe you, we're with you, and we're going to make sure you get every resource you need. I want to turn it over to the Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you've said, what we have been witnessing is truly mass devastation. And whether we are talking about Sylmar to the Palisades to Altadena, it's important to know that we're talking about neighborhoods of people who, in many cases, I think about Altadena, these homes have been in these families for generations. And in many of these homes, it is a multi-generational family that lives there. Also understand that in a lot of these neighborhoods, the folks who live there also work in that neighborhood, which means they've lost their home and their livelihood. So the devastation that we are looking at is multi-generational and is going to linger for quite some time, and the work under the President's leadership that we are doing through the federal government to provide aid in every way to the governor, to the mayor, to local police and fire is critically important, and we are doing it with a sense of urgency. I also would mention that not only are firefighters out there working around the clock, some of whom sadly more than a few who have lost their own homes in the fire, but so too with LAPD police officers who are working around the clock, and there are at least a dozen who have also lost their own homes to the fire. So there is a real human story that is associated with the mass devastation that we are seeing, and everything that we can do to support, we will do. Also understanding there are moments where we should find optimism in the heroism of people who are taking in strangers, taking in friends, providing shelter to evacuees, people looking out for each other regardless of where they come from or who they voted for. They're looking out for each other and showing the best of the American spirit in a moment of crisis.
In addition to that, I want to point out that this is not going to be over even when all the fires are out. It's just going to be beginning. And the change in insurance policy in California for these modest homes as well as these very expensive homes and businesses. So we're going to be around a long while ago to help the federal government and the mayor as well. So, but why don't I yield to you, Governor, for any comments you have to make, bring us up to date.
I appreciate it, Mr. President and Madam Vice President. Let me just pick up on the spirit of your comments, but first with just deep gratitude to both of you for being so solicitous, so supportive, hand in glove in this operation. There's simply not an ask that hasn't been met. The major disaster declaration, Mr. President, was a game changer. In fact, you were able to do that within 36 hours. I don't know if there's another precedent in American history for disaster that was in the making, was unfolding, and for you to be there in real time and prescient as well. And it turns out that we're going to need all of that support. And the fact that you were able to provide 100% is just tremendous relief on the FBAG side and other disaster relief side. And I think the big focus now, to your point, and appreciate the recognition of some progress last night. The winds were favorable. We were able to address some of the perimeter issues. Again, it's been focused about life, property, and perimeter. But the perimeter progress was real because we were able to get fixed wing and helicopters up last night. We had a new fire start, 5 fires that we're actively battling as we speak. The 2 large ones you've highlighted, the 8% and 3% contained. But we're able to, these guys just did an amazing job. We had this fire, Kenneth Fire, that could have been one of the bigger headlines today. And these guys were able to knock that down. It was heroic. I flew around it, see the dozers, the hand crews, our rattlesnake crews in the National Guard, the mutual aid system. Mr. President, 175 engines from across this country, from New Mexico and Oregon and Washington State, Utah, Idaho. Men and women coming out here regardless of their differences, in the spirit of what the Vice President said, working together in the spirit that defines the best of all of us. And so just with deep gratitude to you, your team. We had the National Guard out last night. We had 43 key posts that they were working, 855 National Guard men and women. We're stationing additional National Guard men and women to the extent we need it. We've surged all the assets. We drew down from all over the state and obviously now increasingly across the country. I want to also highlight, because I think it's incredibly important, we have 150,000 people still under mandatory evacuation orders. These fires are not out, though today we're going to make a lot of progress and continue to increase these containment numbers. But it is important, and I cannot impress upon you more how happy I was here. Mr. President, you say disasterassistance.gov. People are now naturally calling. There's tremendous anxiety out there around getting immediate assistance. The reality of this is starting to come. The clarity as the smoke begins to move and daylight, people are starting to understand the magnitude. I thought I never would see anything like the Tubbs fire, then the Camp Fire. This is up there. This will be one of the most destructive fires. I mean, some property damage, perhaps in the history of the country, but certainly in terms of scale and scope, 10,000+ structures already identified, 10 people we fear have lost their lives, likelihood of more. The magnitude of this is pretty profound. And in closing, I appreciate, Madam Vice President, you bringing up Altadena as well. I was there yesterday, saw a middle school. It's a beautiful middle school burning down. Lifestyles, places, tradition, kids, families.